let's look at our one up here. So this is like the same stuff that we did on Friday, where we talked about inductive reasoning. Remember, inductive reasoning is where you look at what's happened in the past and look for what's going to happen in the future based off of what's happened in the past. So we're just looking at this pattern. So as we look here, what's happening going from here to here?
Yeah, it's plus 9.
Okay, yeah, you could either think about it as multiply by 2 or add 9. 9 plus 9 is 18. How do you get from 18 to 27?
Plus 9.
Plus 9, so if you add 9 again,
You get 36.
36. Does 36 plus 9 give you 45?
Yes.
So that still looks good. 45 plus 9,
I did mine differently.
54 plus 9,
63.
plus 9, plus 9,
81.
and then plus 9 is 90. How did you do yours?
I did 9 times 2, 18. 9 times 3, 27. 9 times.
Okay, good. So you did 9 times 2 gives you that. 9 times 3 gives you that. 9 times 4 gives you that. 9 times 5 gives you that. Okay, good. Which is really the same idea of what we said, but it's looking at it a little bit different. All right. Next one. What's going on in this one?
By 2.
So what's the first number here?
Negative 4.
Should be negative 4. Then we add 2 to get that. Add 2 to get 0. Add 2 to get 2. Add 2 to get 4. Add 2 to get 6.
8, 10, 12, 16, 18, 20.
All right. Very simple there. And then on this last one, what's happening?
5.
5.
We're subtracting 5 each time, right? So negative 15, negative 20, negative 30, negative 45. Okay, so again, what that is right there is an example of what we call inductive reasoning. And we talked about that on Friday, and actually we're not going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about it tomorrow. We're going to talk about inductive versus deductive, but just to remind you of that. Okay, so the stuff we're going to talk about today is going to be a little bit different than what you would normally think of in a math class. We're going to actually just be writing sentences today is what's going to be going on. Okay, today we're going to be talking about conditional statements. So a conditional statement is a statement that can be written in if-then form. Okay, so the direction given below is an example of a conditional. So notice it says if you would like to speak to a representative, then you will press 0 now. So there's our conditional. If and then. Okay, now in that conditional, there's 2 different parts. There's the if part and the then part. So if you have your vocabulary handy from Friday, go ahead and get that out because I'm going to be asking several questions from that vocabulary. So I'm going to skip that top part right there. We're just looking at these 2 things. The blank of the conditional statement is the phrase immediately following the word if. And then the other part is going to be the phrase following the word then. So looking at your vocabulary, what do we call that? That is the if part of the conditional. Is the what? What's the if part of a conditional? It's on your vocabulary.
The if part of a conditional hypothesis.
Yep, it is the hypothesis. The hypothesis is the if part. All right, then what is the then part of a conditional?
Conclusion.
Is the conclusion. All right. So we have the hypothesis, which is the if part, the conclusion, which is the then part. Now, as we go through this today, I'm going to do it the same way on all of this. Whenever we find the hypothesis, I'm going to underline it with 1 underline, and then when we find the conclusion, I'm going to double underline it every place. I'm going to do that on everything we look at today. I'll underline the hypothesis once, double underline the conclusion. So in the first conditional statement there, if the forecast is rain, then I will take an umbrella. What do you think the hypothesis in that conditional is? Okay, good. Good, the forecast is rain. And we know that because we're looking at these keywords. I can see the word if right there. So what do you think the conclusion of that statement is?
Then I would take an umbrella.
Okay, I will take an umbrella is the conclusion. It's the part following the word then. So this part right here is our hypothesis. This part right here is our conclusion. Now, just like in real life, everything doesn't always work out nice and neat. Okay, and sometimes the hypothesis and conclusion may not be where you think they should be. The main thing for what we're doing today is just to look for the keywords. Okay, look for the keywords. So if you look for the if and then, it's going to help you figure this one out. A number is divisible by 10 if its last digit is a 0. So again, on this one, it's a little bit weird, but where do you think the hypothesis is on this one?
If it's the last digit.
Okay, good. Its last digit is 0. And again, the reason we know that is we're looking for that keyword if. The hypothesis is the part right after the word if. So what do you think the conclusion is here? A number is divisible by 10. So you could switch that around and it'd make even more sense. Maybe if you were to say if the last digit of a number is 0, then it's divisible by 10. And we're actually going to do some of that in just a second. All right, on this third one here, what do you think the hypothesis in this conditional is? Good. A polygon has 6 sides. And how do you know that's the hypothesis? Because of the word if. Then what's the conclusion going to be? It is a hexagon. And again, because of that key word right there of then.
So we're just looking for then and then.
Yep. Now, we can take regular statements and make them into if-then, and we may do some of that later, but I just want you to get this idea and the main thing we're going to be looking at today. So let's go ahead and flip it over. And this is definitely also going to be on your vocabulary right here. Okay, the blank is formed by exchanging, or on your vocabulary, I use the word switch. It is formed by switching the hypothesis and conclusion.
Converse.
Good, the converse. So on the converse, what you're going to do is you're just going to switch. And we'll do an example in just a second. You'll know what I mean by this in just a little bit, but we're going to switch the hypothesis and conclusion. Okay. Next, the blank is formed by negating. Okay.
Switching into inverse.
Is the inverse. Good. Okay, the inverse is formed by negating both hypothesis and conclusion. So on this one, what we're going to do is we're going to make the hypothesis and conclusion both say not. And again, you'll see what I mean by that in just a second. And then the last one, okay, this one says negating and the converse. So basically it's talking about negating and switching. So which one does both?
Contrapositive.
Okay, good. Really weird word, the contrapositive. The contrapositive. So on this one, what's going to happen is it's going to be not and switched. So it's basically the inverse and converse together. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take some statements today and we're going to do these 3 things to them. All right, so the statement we're going to use here for our main example is this, is if a car is a Corvette, then it's a Chevrolet. Okay, there's some pictures of some Corvettes. All right, some newer ones, an older one there. Okay, so if a car is a Corvette, then it is a Chevrolet. So what do you think the hypothesis of this statement is? A car is a Corvette is the hypothesis. So what's the conclusion? Okay, it is a Chevrolet. kind of a hard word for some people to say, Chevrolet. So if a car is a Corvette, then it is a Chevrolet. Now, before we move on to doing those, I want to talk about whether this statement is true or false. If a car is a Corvette, then it's a Chevrolet. Is that true or false?
True.
That is absolutely true. Okay? I mean, this takes some knowledge of cars, but I picked out some that, that I thought was very familiar to people. So Corvette is made by Chevrolet. Okay? Definitely, Corvettes are made by Chevrolet. So Chevrolet is like the company name, and the Corvette is the actual type of car. So this statement is true. If it's a Corvette, it's made by Chevrolet. Now what we're going to do with the converse is we're going to switch the hypothesis and conclusion.
Ooh, how do we do that?
Okay? So we're going to leave the if and then where they're at, but we're going to switch what's tied to them. So how do you think we could say this? And there's definitely going to be more than one way to say it, and we'll try to say it in a way that makes the sentence make the most sense. So if I were to take this information here and switch it with this information, what do you think the sentence is going to say? Okay, Chevrolet is going to come first, and then Corvette, okay? So I'm going to say it like this. All right, I'm going to say if a car is a Chevrolet, then what? Very good. Then it is a Corvette. So notice I left the word car here. I didn't switch that because it makes the sentence flow better, but I did change the main ideas, okay? You're switching the main idea of this part and the main idea of this. The main idea of this is that it's a Corvette. The main idea of this is that it's a Chevrolet. So notice how the Chevrolet part came first now and the Corvette part came last. So let's think about whether that statement is true or not. If a car is a Chevrolet, then it is a Corvette. What do you think? True or false on that? Okay, I agree. That is false. Why is that false?
Because Chevrolet doesn't just have one Corvette.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. Okay? This is saying if the car is a Chevrolet, that it has to be a Corvette. Or in other words, another way to think about this is saying that every car that Chevrolet makes is a Corvette. Does Chevrolet make any cars that are not Corvettes? Yes. Okay. So that's going to bring me to the next thing is since we said this is false, we need to give a counterexample. So somebody look at your vocabulary. It's the last word on the last definition on there. What does counterexample mean?
An example that proves a statement to be false.
Okay, an example that proves a statement to be false. So it's like a specific example. So this is going to take a little bit of knowledge of cars, and I'm not a huge car guy at all, but so somebody think of a car that's a Chevrolet that's not a Corvette.
Truck.
Okay, we could say a Camaro, that'll work. Okay, so the Camaro is a counterexample because think about it. Is a Camaro a car that Chevrolet makes? Yes, but is it a Corvette? No. So this is a counterexample proving this statement to be false. Okay, next thing we're going to do is what's called the, it's called the inverse. And on this one, it's just going to say not. Now on this one, we go back to the original. We do not modify the one that we just modified. So I'm going to go back and think about this. So all I'm going to do is make this part say not and this part say not.
Right.
So I'm going to say if a car is not a Corvette, then it is not a Chevrolet. Exactly. Okay, so if a car, and I'm going to just kind of shorten this a little bit. If a car isn't a Corvette, then it isn't a Chevrolet. If a car isn't a Corvette, then it isn't a Chevrolet. Does that true or false?
False.
That's false also, I agree. Why is that false?
They don't just make Corvettes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. This is saying if a car isn't a Corvette, then it can't be a Chevrolet, but that's not true. So what could I give as a counterexample of that?
Wait.
But this says, okay, so it needs to be a car that's not a Corvette, but that is a Chevrolet.
A truck.
Okay, but it needs to be a car.
Oh, a car.
Okay, we can use the same one as the last one, a Camaro. Okay?
A Chevy Malibu.
Yeah, we could have put Malibu. That'd been good. Okay, because think about it. A Malibu is not a Corvette, right? So it does fit into that, but a Malibu is a Chevrolet, okay? This is saying if it's not a Corvette that it cannot be a Chevrolet, but the Malibu, shows that to be false. Now on the last one is the contrapositive. So on this one we're going to do both. We're going to switch and make it say not. And again, on this one, we go back to the original. We're switching and making it say not on the original. So what's this going to say?
A car is not a Chevrolet.
Yep. Good. So if a car is not a Chevrolet,
It is not a Corvette.
then it's not a Corvette. Good. So if a car isn't a Chevrolet, then it isn't a Corvette. Okay, I agree with that. It's true. Why do you think it's true? It's true because it's true? That's a good answer. Okay, if a car is not a Chevrolet, so they're saying this car cannot be made by Chevrolet. If it's not made by Chevrolet, then it's not going to be a Corvette, right? Because it can't be because Chevrolet makes Corvettes. So this is a true statement. Okay. I always get this question. We're doing this kind of stuff and people are like, okay, how does this have anything to do with math class? And let me show you this, okay? So let me describe a couple things. Don't worry, okay? I'm just going to show you this. All right, as a geometry teacher in the state of Texas, the TEA, the Texas Education Agency, tells me what I have to teach to you as a geometry student, okay? And they give me this whole long list. This is part of it. You can see right here at the top it says geometry. So everything, that's the stuff that I have to teach to you as a geometry student. There, and there's more that I didn't put in here. Okay? So once you drop all the way down here to G4B, okay, G4B, right here, identify and determine the validity of the converse, inverse, and contrapositive. Okay? So I'm just showing you. This is something that as a geometry teacher, this is, part of what geometry is. But it's something that we teach in here, okay? So what you need to know about it is it's not just something weird that I've, decided for y'all to learn. There's kids in Houston that are learning this who are taking geometry class. There's kids in Dallas who are taking this. There's kids in El Paso who are taking geometry who have to learn this, okay? Every geometry kid in the state of Texas has to learn about converse, inverse, and contrapositive. Okay, real quick on your assignment, I want you to see this. First of all, this box right here, you're not filling out anything in this box. I just put this here just so you could basically see this part right here, just to remind you about that. You're not filling anything into that box that I just highlighted. Okay? But let's talk about this top part right here. What is the if part of a conditional? Is the hypothesis. What is the then part? Is the conclusion. Okay? Hypothesis and conclusion. So what I want you to do is you go through here. I want you to do like we were just doing. I want you to underline the hypothesis once and double underline the conclusion. So in this statement, which one is the hypothesis? Yes, the forward one. Okay, cars and Mustang is the hypothesis. What's the conclusion?
Then it is a Ford.
Then it is a Ford. Okay, and just if you don't know, yes, Mustangs are made by Ford. This statement right here is true.
Do we
Okay?
have to write the false stuff for these ones, or is it just?
Yes, what I want you to do is I want you to write the true or false over here.
Do we write the little sentence at the bottom, the counterexample?
Yes, I want you to think about the counterexample. Some of these, there won't be like a clear counterexample. On this one, there is. On this one, there's not necessarily a very clear counterexample.
So if we can't think of it, just don't do it?
Well, I want you to just think about it. Just think about it. Okay? All right.